So for the longest time, and I genuinely mean for about a decade at this point, probably even longer, a very important issue that's been discussed in the gaming community, a hot button topic of conversation, has been, and I think will continue to be, the idea of representation in gaming. I feel like we're at a really weird time where originally I feel like the idea of representation being pushed in gaming was like pretty widely considered to be cringe and unpopular. If you look back at like 2016 to 2017, all of the big YouTubers that were discussing this idea were strongly criticizing it and getting millions of views, hundreds of thousands of likes supporting this idea, and it was kind of the agreed upon position that forced representation or inserting diversity into video games when not applicable or just in general for no reason was generally chastised by consumers.
So who would DICE rather piss off with Battlefield 1? Historians and fans of the series? Or a bunch of butthurt blathering babies that want to see history changed to include women in a war that they barely even fought in? Who would CD Projekt Red rather piss off? The Polish nation, the people and mythology of Poland, or some fuckwit dingoes that care too much about skin color?
And then there was a period around 2020 up until I'd say 2022 where it kind of flipped, and the idea of thinking that representation and diversity is cringe became cringe in itself.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Like if you think about that guy who was reviewing Starfield and was screaming about the fact that you could choose your own pronouns in the player select option.
Sorry, did you want to get immersed in our world? Yeah, well, guess what? Fucking pronouns!
That guy basically became a lol cow for bread tubers to milk. Everybody on the left-wing side of the commentary community was saying how cringe this guy was because he's a grown man freaking out over pronouns in a video game. And truthfully, they were kind of right. I mean, look, like, even if that guy had a point, his entire presentation and demeanor was nothing other than a fucking crazy meltdown. But since then and now in 2024, I feel like we're back in some sort of a weird middle ground on this entire issue where I'd say you have about 50% of people thinking that forced representation and diversity in video games is very cringy still, and the other 50% of people either don't care, actively support it, or make fun of the people that are against it. And this isn't something I've ever really spoken about in isolation. It's usually been off the heels of some big drama that took place, like back when Valorant in December of 2022 was posting that picture of the two characters making out for no reason. And my criticism at the time was that the game and the community had shifted drastically, and the community had seemed to have become really sexual and suggestive all the time. There was this pandemic of e-daters infiltrating the game and using the voice chat to basically not communicate callouts for the game, but just to like flirt with each other. And I called out Valorant in a video that I made, basically saying what they're posting is not going to do anything but exacerbate this issue. And I had all these people in my replies calling me homophobic because the two characters making out were girls. And Valorant was basically able to scapegoat any sort of criticism that was being levied against them because of the fact that they used a same-sex kiss. Like everybody was like, oh, are you homophobic? Are you against representation? And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, it's actually this easy to avoid criticism. Like, do something that objectively worsens the state of the community, but do it in a subversive way so that anyone who criticizes you looks like a bad person. It's like actually genius. Now, before we get into what we're talking about today, I just want to make my position on this issue very clear. I generally don't care what agenda any of the media that I'm consuming pushes, unless it affects the quality of the product. A great example of this is comedy. I don't care if you're a left-wing comedian or a right-wing comedian and your jokes are a reflection of your worldview. I just want you to be funny. I think anybody, regardless of their political background, their ideology, race, yada yada yada, can be fucking funny. Well, not everybody. I mean, obviously that's why only so many good comedians out there, but my point still stands. I've watched shows on Netflix where the lead protagonist is a raging liberal. I've watched movies where white characters say the N-word. I just don't really care. Ultimately, the quality of the plot, the content matters the most to me. Now, with this in mind, I absolutely cannot stand virtue signaling and people being performative. That's something that always has and will continue to bother me. When companies especially go out of their way to try to signal to their consumers that they're good people and that they stand with their buyers and stuff, it's like when you can tell it's forced, it is so disingenuous and completely turns you off from the product. And this is a pretty obvious example, but I feel like you guys have seen this meme where Bethesda, for example, they'll make their Twitter account a rainbow flag for every single region of their Twitter account. Bethesda US, rainbow. Bethesda France, rainbow, except for the Middle East. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, do they actually support LGBT rights or Pride Month or whatever? No, they just simply are in favor of it where other people are in favor of it. They're like morality chameleons. They just blend in with whatever's popular at the time, or to their consumer base, for example. And something took place recently, again with Valorant, that is the catalyst for why I'm recording this video, and it's they announced the new agent that they're adding to the video game who is non-binary named Clove. Now, for the record, I stopped playing Valorant around 2 years ago at this point due to the rampant cancer that took place in the Valorant community, whether that would be the over-sexualization. The quality of the game itself, too, I feel like got drastically worse. Like, Chamber, around the time when I was playing it, was the most overpowered character in the entire video game. You literally could not beat this character. If you don't play the game, I just want you to be able to understand how broken of a character this guy was. I think to this day, even after they've nerfed the fuck out of him, he's still one of the most broken agents in the game. Like, his ultimate grants him a gun that no other agent is able to use, and it's one of the most expensive guns in the game, but it like fires faster as well.
Nice one.
Oh, and did I mention he can literally teleport? Point is, I stopped playing the game a while ago, but I'm still somewhat in the community because of, like, creators that I'm friends with. They make Valorant content, and so I end up watching it. And I am interested in the game in the sense that I, like, see its potential. I think that it can honestly become a good game if they do things, not like what they're doing recently. Like, okay, recently, like I said, they announced this new agent who is non-binary, and honestly, I can't think of a single reason why. Like, why? I mean, like, okay, I know why they do it. Like, it's, like, for representation so that they can connect with the non-binary players and whatever. But Valorant is a game that requires heavy communication, and that's not up for debate. You need to be able to communicate in the game Valorant. If you want to rank up, everybody at the top rank needs to have their mic on. Okay, this is a game that requires a lot of callouts, hyper-focus, audible communication, etc. Strategy planning, you get the idea.
Nice. Two people. Don't push them. Maybe flank. How much you flank, Alpha? Dead.
Nice!
Nice. Give me. Good job, Alpha. Good job, everyone. They have a molly. They have mollies, guys.
They have
Go
one
on,
more
go on.
molly. One more molly, guys.
I can't push them.
Need to go after this one.
I'm gonna tap one.
Left side. Bond last.
I'll kill right
Let's go.
side.
We need to go.
Minus 40. Nice, good job.
And when you're playing the game, you're referring to enemy players, you're going to give them pronouns, okay? Like Phoenix, like Jet. You're going to say he and she. He's one, she's one. And if this agent needs to be referred to with they, them pronouns, like, bro, I can only see this going bad because you have to imagine the professional player slash streamer that's playing the game. And because Valorant has this horrible habit of making every new agent they introduce the most broken character in the game for about like a week or two until they're eventually nerfed, assuming this Clove person is going to be like following that rule, the most broken agent in the game, she's obviously going to be the most broken character in the game for the first 2 weeks, so pros will not be able to avoid her. So when the non-controversial, non-problematic streamer who has literally nothing to say about politics ever gets killed by Clove and then is like, she's one, because I guess you can't say she, you have to say they, them, right? The chat is going to be like, it's they. It's like, he didn't fucking ask for this. He's not asking to even come across as controversial or insert himself into this conversation about gender identity. That conversation forced its way into his wife, and that's kind of not fair. Like, I feel like that's fucked up to put like players in a position where they're basically going to seem like they have something to say about this. Like, most of these people just want to make their money, play their game, and be in peace, and now they're gonna have to interact with their community, and this is probably gonna get brought up at some point. And that's the part of representation in media or video games that I really hate. Like, the idea that it has to start a conversation or strike up a dialogue about like some sort of current event or political thing. It is, and this might sound weird to say, but it is pushing an agenda. It's compelling players to speak a certain way, and it's compelling language. It is asking players to live in the same paradigm as the developers, which is something I really don't like. When you're watching a show or a movie, you're not interacting with the media, you're just consuming it. So if a character makes a decision, you know, that's just like the decision the character made. But when you're playing a video game, you're engaging in a world that was made by a bunch of developers, right? And the whole idea that you have to engage in this world that they've created full of things that they believe in their ideology does kind of piss me off. Like, imagine playing through Resident Evil 4 for like 20 hours and the only way to beat the final boss is by voting for Trump.
I want to build the wall. We need the wall.
Like, in-game, Leon has to go to the market, purchase a MAGA hat, and equip it for 5x damage, which is like the only amount of damage that will be sufficient enough to deal with the final boss. You know what I mean? Like, imagine a streamer playing that and then having to put on the MAGA hat, and then it's just like, your chat goes nuts, everyone goes nuts. It's just like, you know, like, just chill, alright? Don't make me do this. Now, aside from that, I also feel as if representation in video games is a cheap ploy, like I mentioned earlier, to divert attention away from actual bad things that the companies are doing. doing that are pushing representation. Like, Valorant is a great example. Like, Riot Games does have some skeletons in their closet. Like, Riot Games settled a sexual harassment litigation for $100 million back in 2021, and they were also acquired by Tencent Games, which is like the Chinese-based group, and, you know, the whole CCP thing. I don't know, it's like Opera GX type shit. My point here is that a lot of left-leaning and progressive people like to call out injustices in the corporate world, and rightfully so, because there actually is a lot of bad shit that needs to be talked about, and bad stuff that takes place in the corporate world. But the way that they flip almost instantly and start defending the companies that like 2 seconds ago they were chastising is insane and needs to be studied. All because they put a rainbow on something, or all because they stood with Ukraine or some shit. This is exactly what happened to me back in December of 2022 when I had criticized Valorant for the promotion they had done, and then I have all these people in my replies, like I said, calling me homophobic and stuff. And I remember reading the replies to this tweet, checking out these pages, and these people have like, you know, the communist hammer and sickle icon in their profile. So it's like these people are communists, I guess, but like they also are somehow convinced that like these corporate people who make Valorant and do the PR for them actually give a fuck about their identity and want to do anything besides pander to them. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I thought the entire point of the ideology was that capitalism is subversive, and then you see it happen in real time, but then you go on to defend the company. Like, no offense, but I feel like you could be the most low IQ motherfucker on the planet, but still figure out that a game that is literally a 5v5 tactical shooter is probably making their characters lesbian as a business decision, not something that improves the quality of the game. And seeing these people defend Riot Games and Valorant so much when they did this kind of just proves that it was a smart business decision. So truthfully, we're all kind of getting suckered by Valorant at the end of the day. So alright, well, the final point that I want to make is like a half joke, half serious, but like if you really think about it, it does kind of make sense. The more people you include, the more people it seems like you exclude, and I'll explain that. Like, when you apparently are letting everybody under the fold and like everybody's included, the people who evidently aren't included because you quite literally cannot include everybody, it's just not possible, seem more disenfranchised. Like, there's not a single bald character in Valorant. And the only reason I noticed this is because they announced the non-binary character. I'm like, okay, they have a non-binary character. Do they even have a dude without hair? I guess it's possible that Brimstone doesn't have hair, but you get my point. A lot of the times when I feel like companies try so hard to represent everybody, they end up excluding more people than they think. Either way, whether Valorant's next hero is a non-binary bearded woman with alopecia and prescription glasses doesn't affect the fact that I'm not going to play it, but the more and more instances I see of gaming companies trying to be inclusive and they just end up doing some shit like this, it gets to a point where I become pissed off, you know? Anyway, with that all being said, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're at all new to the channel, and comment down tomato if you made it to the end of the video. I'll try to heart your comment, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Follow my social medias, by the way, and the Discord server links are all down below. But in the meantime, take care.